All right, guys, so I'm going to be giving a lesson on Dr. Faustus and the morality tradition. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think this is an amazing play, especially coming off of Macbeth and talking about the corruption of power and how you can make a mistake and have the chance to eradicate that mistake or reverse that mistake. And then these characters just do not, and they don't end up well, obviously. So I read Douglas Cole's article, Dr. Faustus and the Morality Tradition. So one question that he mainly asked is this: is Faustus representative of man? Is he a good representative of mankind with his uncommon intellect, his reach of imagination and ambition, and that idea of wanting to learn about and touch on forbidden magic and arrogance? And so I thought this quote was amazing. The quality of evil and of suffering inherent in Marlowe's Faustus establishes him as neither hero nor villain, but as a man. So we're not trying to categorize him as a hero. We're not trying to categorize him as a villain. He is a picture of mankind and our desire for reaching ambition and our obsession with the things that are forbidden. So we've got to recognize this is what Cole wants us to recognize: the relationship of English morality. The Faustus tragedy is a spiritual one. So we're not thinking of this just as a tragedy in general. It actually has spiritual connotations. So Marlowe's vision of evil in this play is the vision of Christian theology. Faustus's tragedy is a spiritual one. He willfully chooses his own destruction under the guise of self-glory. So he wants to glorify himself. He wants all these people, and he performs all these acts to impress people. And he makes this 24-year pact with a devil, essentially. And this is a reflection of Christian theology because he's willfully choosing his own destruction. He knows the consequences, and that's what makes us think about English morality. Deep fear and human torment. No figure in early Elizabethan tragic drama has ever been driven to such torment. So this is, I would say, Cole's main argument here, is that because of the amount of fear and the human torment and his willful choice is what makes him the most tragic of early Elizabethan drama. We talk about the 7 deadly sins in here and how everything comes back to a moral choice. So usually you have lust, greed, envy, wrath, gluttony, pride, and sloth, but Marlowe does this in a very interesting way. And so Faustus demonstrates the quest for supernatural knowledge and power, the conquest in the seas, the dominion over foreign powers in this era. So on pages 233 through 234 in Cole's article, what he's saying is that this quest for supernatural knowledge and power that Faustus demonstrates is actually a picture of the English era of conquest overseas and having dominion over foreign powers. And so the pride and willfulness of this conquest is a perfect picture for what Faustus is going through. He's striving after knowledge and power, but in reality, it's his pride and his willfulness that's going to lead to his destruction. So we have these personified characters of the 7 deadly sins, but it's almost a laughing matter in this play. This was what I immediately, maybe because I'm a 9th grade teacher, but I immediately thought of Angels and Demons as that part in Emperor's New Groove where you have Kronk and he's standing there. He's like, should I kill this llama? Should I not kill this llama? And it's this comedic thing we see throughout literature and film of an angel versus a demon, and you're just listening to both of them, and usually the character makes the right choice. Now, what Cole is telling us is that it's actually very special in this play. It's very different than other plays that we see. There's an absence of interaction between good and evil, angels and demons. So they're not interacting, but the main character, Dr. Faustus, is. So he's never separated from the conflict. and he himself is the only one to resolve it. So that is what Cole's arguing is tragic and unique about this play in this time period, is that it doesn't have this, should I be good, should I be bad? And they're not separate characters. This is revolving around Faustus, and he is a part of this decision. And then there's a quote on 238, on page 238 in Cole's article, and it says that he delights in evil for what it is, evil. So we see a lot of characters who get duped into doing bad things, or they are persuaded by they're persuaded by ambition. They want more money, so they make bad choices. But it's more comedic in the plays that we've seen in this class. So what is tragic about Dr. Faustus is that he knows it's evil and he's obsessed with it. He's drawn in by it. And that is what Cole's arguing, is that's why he's so representative of mankind, because it's tragic how much we want to learn about things that could possibly destroy us. So he delights in evil for what it is, evil. And the demons are not the destructive agents. The destructive agent is mankind, which all ties back to that Christian morality. So Cole calls Faustus's perspective a self-imposed moral blindness. He's doing it to himself. He's allowing himself to be morally blind to this. And that is what makes him such a tragic and interesting character. He demands that Mephistopheles assumes a more pleasing and pious shape, is what Cole says. And he uses that instance to talk about to prove the fact that he is self-imposing this moral blindness. He knows that he's evil, that he shouldn't even look upon Mephistopheles, but he asks him to assume a more pleasing and pious shape. So he's essentially controlling this situation. Then we've got the tragedy of moral choice, Faustus as both victim and executioner. So that is the tragedy. He's morally choosing to go against what he had been learning about and what he had originally, what he was originally seeking after. He was seeking after knowledge and intellect and reason, and he went completely opposite with that. He is a victim of his own choices, and he's also the executioner in his own choices. So essentially, I like Cole's argument because he's arguing that Dr. Faustus is tragic, because if we think about morality, we think about Christian tradition. It's our choices that determine our fate. So whether or not, if we choose to do good and to honor God with our decisions, then we'll get to go to heaven. But Christian morality also says if you choose to focus on the 7 deadly sins and to let evil consume you and to dwell in evil, then that means that you are going to meet a tragic end. So if we look at the 7 deadly sins a little bit closer, we see that Faustus, Dr. Faustus, meets these as characters. He meets lust and envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, and pride as characters. And that is what is unique. What Cole argues is unique about this play is that they are characterized, but it's almost to Dr. Faustus that he doesn't care. This doesn't scare him like it would Christians of that time period. So I wanted to read Cole's words because I think he forms his argument very well when he talks about the quest for supernatural knowledge and power and how that relates to the idea of hubris, which is something that I talk about with my 9th graders because we read the Odyssey and we see that the pride and the willfulness usually leads to the character's downfall. And that's something we see all throughout literature, but specifically in ancient Greece. So let me move my little picture box here. So Cole actually quotes from Heilmann. As every man, Faustus embodies a perennial human aspiration to escape inhibitions, to control the universe, to reconstruct the cosmos in naturalistic, non-theistic terms. As an intellectual, he is also aware of the exploit and its philosophical dimensions, and every man the tragic flaw, pride, willfulness causes blindness to the nature and destiny of man, and the intellectual hubris destroys the understanding of nature and the limitations of knowledge. So not only are we talking about hubris just being prideful with yourself, but we're talking about the fact that Dr. Faustus was an intellectual makes it even more tragic because it destroys understanding of nature and the limitations of knowledge. Cole is almost arguing that knowledge, having a limitation of knowledge, is a beautiful thing in the Christian faith. So in the Christian faith, they believe that we can't know everything. That's up to God. It's not our responsibility. So what he's saying there is that it's the intellect of Dr. Faustus and the desire to know everything is what makes this tragic. And so if you look down here, it says, it will be noticed that Faustus never directs his attention to the good and evil angels as dramatic entities. He neither speaks directly to them nor shows any sensible awareness of their physical presence. Their words are suggestive, however, of the drift of his own thought. Hence, their activity remains on the spiritual rather than a physical level insofar as Faustus is concerned. So talking about the angels and demons and how that plays into the fact that it's showing a conflict of his intellect. He's extremely smart, and that's what he's been striving towards his whole life. And now that he goes off of that path and just chooses to be to worship the black arts and to learn about that, it's almost shifting his intellect in the wrong direction. So we see here when we're talking about angels and demons and this idea of Faustus not interacting with them, he's just the center of the conflict. Cole talks about how he delights in evil for what it is. It's evil. So if we go over to what it says, is that Faustus does not even get the dubious credit of being attracted to evil under the guise of an apparent good. He delights in it for what it really is, and under circumstances which present it as a reward for his obedience to the devil. Faustus therefore needs no deception to lead him into sin. He is his own worst deceiver, his own worst enemy, and his own worst tempter. Thus, there is hardly any need in Marlowe's play for the most vital of morality conventions, the character of the vice. So I thought this was very important because his chief aggressor is the devil, and the devil whose language and behavior bears little resemblance either to the habitual behavior of the vice or to that of any devil who ever trod on the English stage. So yes, the devil is there. He is a temptation, but Faustus doesn't even need one of the 7 deadly sins, which is vice, because he already is tempting himself. So Cole spends his entire argument proving that Faustus is the most tragic character because of the torment that he undergoes, leading himself there. And he ends it with the quality of evil and of suffering inherent in Marlowe's Faustus establish him as neither hero nor villain, but as a man. So what I want us to think about in this play is the idea of, is Dr. Faustus, is he a good representation of mankind and our temptations? Could Dr. Faustus symbolize the conquest of the English and the desire to gain power and knowledge and dominion over the world in this era? Could he be a symbol of that? The only thing I have trouble with Cole's argument is that, can we really consider Dr. Faustus and his end? Could we really consider that torment to be tragic if he chose that path? He made that pact, a 24-year-old pact, and then it seems at the end, it seems to me that he begs for mercy simply because he's pushed aside the truth and the consequences, and now that they're here, he's like, have mercy on me. I I don't want to do this, I repent, but it's too late. So could we really consider that to be a tragedy? That's the one thing with Cole's argument that I wasn't really sure about. And also, I'm not familiar with 1500, 1600 texts. So to me, maybe I need to read up more about that to see if he truly is the most tragic character. And finally, is Faustus representative of mankind? Can we look at his uncommon intellect, his reach of imagination and ambition, the obsession with forbidden magic, and arrogance? Can we look at that as a true representation of mankind? And what does that say about English morality? Thank you guys so much for listening. I really enjoyed this play, and I really enjoyed Cole's argument.